I recently started getting into Greek metal bands. It started this year when I was listening to new albums. I discovered two bands that were ranked high on my end of the year list. One was Rotting Christ with Pro Christou. The other was Suicidal Angels with Profane Prayer. They were two different kinds of bands, the former being a black metal band, the latter being a thrash band. But there was something about that Greek sound which made them sound so different than all these other bands that I've been listening to. I decided to do some research. I came up with a list of different Greek bands that were recommended. Other than the two aforementioned bands, there was one other band on the list I was familiar with, and another one which had someone who played guitar with Ozzy Osbourne. So with that being said, let me talk about some of the bands I discovered. I have 10 bands to talk about. I'll start with the bands that I was familiar with, then I will get into my new discoveries based on my recommendations that I got online. First one I want to talk about is Rotting Christ. They're considered to be the most famous black metal band from Greece. They formed in 1987, began as a grindcore band, but then transitioned to black metal. They gained international acclaim for their unique sound, and it's very dark and has lots of dark themes, but it sounds very different than a typical black metal band. I was only familiar with their most recent album, Pro Christou, so I decided to go all the way back. I listened to their first full-length album called Thy Mighty Contract, and that's considered to be a classic in black metal. I noticed it was much darker and heavier than the most recent album, but it didn't sound like traditional black metal. They had their own style. The music was closer to traditional heavy metal at times, and the songs still had lots of melody. But at the same time, there were still elements of black metal, such as blast beats and the fast tremolo picking. This band likes to change tempos a lot throughout the songs. They incorporate different sounds. You can hear keyboards in some of the songs, but the album is filled with lots of guitar riffs, and I found it easier to listen to than many other classic black metal bands. So that might be because I'm becoming more accustomed to the sound as well, but that's what I'm going to start off with. But my next band is going to be something completely different, and this is the other band that I talked about, which is thrash metal. So the next one I have is Suicidal Angels. I was familiar with this band because their album from 2024, Profane Prayer, was in my top 5 end of the year list. They are a thrash metal band from Athens. They formed in 2001. I decided to do the same thing. I went back to their first album. I listened to Eternal Domination. This is their debut album released in 2007. I noticed it was a little different from their new album, Profane Prayer. I felt there was a lot more straightforward thrash metal with an old school sound, similar to bands like Slayer and Sodom. I thought the newer one had a lot more melody and more peaks and valleys, but this debut album was pretty solid. It was just straightforward thrash metal. They also have this anti-Christianity theme throughout most of the album, and you can see that a lot in the song titles. For example, the opening track is called Quench Your Thirst with Christian Souls. Other tracks are called Slaughtering Christianity and Vomit on the Cross. So I'm reading these titles and I'm thinking, okay, I get it. You're against this. But other than that, just talking about the music, it's some pretty solid thrash metal. It's a band I definitely recommend, and that debut album is just really good. The next one I have is Septicflesh. They are a symphonic death metal band. They formed in 1990. They're known for the orchestral arrangements and having complex compositions, and they incorporate different musical elements like choirs, classical instruments, so they're pretty unique. It's one of those bands I was familiar with. I know they released an album about 2 years ago. I don't think I reviewed it on my channel, but I decided to go all the way back to the beginning, and I listened to the first album that was called Mystic Places of Dawn. It was not too bad. The symphonic elements were more in the background on this one. It had more of an extreme metal sound that mixed different genres such as black metal, death metal, and there were different instruments that could be heard. I thought the overall sound was kind of raw, but I'm sure their production improved over time. I like the band, although not my favorite symphonic death metal band. That would be Flesh God Apocalypse. I'm a big fan of that band. But I think this band is still pretty good. I definitely recommend checking it out. I'm interested in checking out their other stuff. Next is Firewind. They are a power metal band that was founded in 1998. Since then, the band has gained international recognition. Their music is like traditional heavy metal with melodic elements. This is the one that features the guitar player from Ozzy Osbourne, whose name is Gus G. So this band has released lots of different albums, and they're known for being like very technical. They released an album in 2024 called Stand United. I didn't even notice it. It was released back in March, so I didn't even listen to it. It just went under my radar. But I wanted to just go back to the beginning like I have been with the other albums. I listened to the first album, which is called Between Heaven and Hell. The first full studio album released in 2002, even though they had a demo before that. That was in 1998. But I started with the first full studio album. Now for this band, I was expecting power metal, something like Hammerfall, Halloween, something like that. But when I listened to it, I found it was more like traditional heavy metal. And I noticed the vocals were more powerful, more this like Ronnie James Dio-esque, as opposed to a typical power metal band that usually have higher range vocals, something like Halloween or Hammerfall, those types of bands. But it wasn't like that. It was more heavy metal. And I thought it was pretty cool. So I don't know their other albums, if they start sounding more like power metal, but eventually I will listen to them. Pretty cool band, so I'll start checking them out later on. But the next band I have is called Varathron. This is also considered to be one of the pioneers of the Greek black metal scene, and they formed in 1988. I listened to their first album called His Majesty at the Swamp, and I felt this one was more of a death doom type of album. Even though they are considered to be black metal, maybe their later stuff sounds more like black metal, but I only listened to the one album. I found their sound to be very dark and eerie. The album opens with an intro track, sounds like the intro to a horror movie. In general, most of the songs are slow moving with heavy riffs, lots of melodic lead guitar playing. I found the vocals to be more like death metal vocals. They had this like sick and disgusting low guttural sound. Some of the guitar tones reminded me of black metal. So for example, on track number 2, Unholy Funeral, had that distinct guitar tone with haunted keyboards in the background. Overall, I enjoyed the album. I still felt it was more of a death metal album, but that might just be their early sound. I'm interested in this band, so eventually I will be listening to the rest of their stuff. The next band was Murder Made God. They are a technical death metal band from Thessaloniki. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Formed in 2011. They have 3 albums, and I listened to the first one called Irreverence. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of technical death metal, but I thought it was pretty cool. It's a short album. It's only 30 minutes long. Songs were about 3 minutes each. The thing I noticed about this band is they use a lot of stop-start guitar riffs and odd time signatures. It almost sounds like the track is skipping a beat as you listen, but you notice it's intentional. I also noticed the album has lots of speed, aggression, low guttural vocals. If I have anything negative to say, that sometimes the songs sound similar, as they all have these like weird pauses between the guitar riffs. But at the same time, that aspect of the sound makes the band sound unique. So I'd say it's pretty cool considering it's a genre I don't listen to that much. The next band I have is Nightstalker, and this one will be much different than the other bands on the list because they are a stoner metal band, similar to some of those California desert rock bands such as Kair or Fu Manchu. The band has been active since 1989. They've gained a following. You might even say they predate the aforementioned bands Kair or Fu Manchu. I listened to their 1996 album called Use, because the one before it was just an EP. It was pretty cool. Songs basically have a very thick and fuzzy guitar tone and some retro-sounding vocals. They have a classic stoner metal sound with slow rhythms and a thick and fuzzy bass guitar sound. Their songs also have long instrumental sections. I thought the band was pretty cool. Although I'm not the biggest fan of stoner rock, it's a genre I revisit every now and then. I find it interesting because the band doesn't get a lot of attention, and I think they've actually been doing it longer than many of the other American bands that are much more popular, but overall it's not too bad. The next band I have is Kair. They're known for having a pagan black metal sound, and they use a lot of Greek mythology and history in their lyrics. They formed in 1993. I like the fact that they incorporate traditional instruments into their music. I thought it creates this like unique atmosphere, and it's very reflective of the ancient religion they're talking about. And I listened to their album called Isophiles from 2012. I couldn't find the earlier ones on streaming. So it's an interesting band. It's black metal, but very melodic, and there's this folk music quality to it. Some songs have different chanting vocals. You can hear different wind instruments. It's not all blast beats and screaming. Still has elements of traditional black metal, but they're mixed in with all the other stuff, and that's what I like about it. It's one of those black metal bands that's very relaxing to listen to, which Doesn't seem to make sense, but that's what I felt. They create this big wall of music. It draws you in. So I thought they were pretty unique, and I enjoyed the band a lot. Next is Sacal Rage. This is a progressive thrash and speed metal band from Athens. They're pretty new on the scene. They formed in 2011. I listened to their debut album from 2015 called Illusions in Infinite Void. I thought this one was much different than the other bands I listened to. They were similar to bands like Vector or even Voivod. A lot of high-pitched falsetto vocals, and that was similar to the band Agent Steel. I enjoyed this because they are pretty unique. Sometimes they play classical-style guitar riffs that sound like the first Annihilator album. Other times they include clean guitar sections in the songs. So it keeps things interesting. There are times when I can tell they're trying to sound like Voivod. They play those like riffs on the upper part of the neck. But other times they put in a lot of different ideas into the sound. They use a lot of different odd time signatures. There's lots of different changes going on in the song. And pretty much everything on the album is very fast and heavy. So if you like music that's fast-paced, I definitely think you would like this. I don't think this band is very well known, and I think they deserve more attention. I have one more band, and that is called YTH Area, another Greek black metal band. They've released 2 albums. This band has Jim Mutilator on bass. He previously played with both Rotting Christ and Varathron, 2 of the bands I spoke of in this video. They play style black metal similar to Rotting Christ. I listened to their latest album, Blazing Inferno. This one came out late in the year, so I never really gave it a chance. Otherwise, it probably would have been included in my top 40 end of the year list. It has this very unique style of black metal that comes from Greece. At times, it sounds like traditional black metal with the screams and blast beats. Other times, they add in these atmospheric sections where everything goes quiet. There are other times when they start off the song with a melodic guitar solo, such as the song Purgatory Revolution. They also know when to slow things down and speed things up. I think this was one of those albums that I missed and should have made my end of the year list, as it is the type of black metal that I like. So what is my takeaway from this journey into Greek metal bands? My takeaway is that I am a fan of Greek black metal bands. Although the black metal has never been my go-to genre of choice, but there's something about that Greek sound where they do it differently and they make it easier for me to listen to, or at least that's my perception. But I don't know, let me know in the comments, what are your favorite Greek metal bands? Is there another specific country you'd like me to do a deep dive into? And that would be cool. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please give the video a like. Helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you have not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.